Hi, I'm Miranda Krestovnikoff and this is They Didn't Teach Me That. I've been contacted by a trainee teacher who's in desperate need of some advice on her big problem, classroom management. I've got her plea for help on this MP4 player and I'm going to play it to some experts, including the best known football referee in the country. Let's see if they can help. I'm on my way to meet my first expert, but in the meantime, take a look at the message I received.
Hi, my name's Andy. I'm doing a PGCE at Goldsmiths College in London. I'm currently on my teaching practice in Croydon and I'm really struggling to get the kids' attention during the lesson to be quiet for long enough, even for 3 seconds, just so I can give them some instructions. If I was talking to them at this level, they wouldn't hear me at all. Secondly, the type of pupils that I teach really have confrontation issues and I need to find a way to do it without being confrontational, otherwise they'll just argue back at me and it will just escalate into a big row. I've got an observation coming up, so if you could really get this cracked for me, I'd be really appreciative. Thank you.
So it comes down to 2 issues for Andy: developing non-confrontational tactics and finding an alternative to shouting. And my first expert should be able to help on both fronts. I've come here to a new school in East London to get the head teacher's advice on how Andy can better control her classroom.
I'm really struggling to get the kids' attention during the lesson. Secondly, the type of pupils that I teach really have confrontation issues and I need to find a way to do it without being confrontational.
So one of the things that Andy's finding is that she always has to shout to be heard in the classroom. How can she get around that?
I think the beginning of the lesson is absolutely critical. It's about coming into the space, looking like you're comfortable with what you're about to do, looking like you are pleased to be doing what you're going to do, not looking scared, not looking apprehensive, because children, like animals actually, are very good at picking up on those signals.
And any other general tips for Andy?
Yes, particularly again at the beginning of a lesson where there's something happening that is quite low level, it's not actually disrupting the rest of the lesson, so you do what's called selective ignoring, which is that you carry on with what you're doing till the end of that chunk of the lesson, kids go on to something else, and then you go and have the little private word, so you're not setting up that confrontation in front of everybody else where the kid feels they're being put into a bit of a corner and all their mates are watching, and the last thing they're going to do is back down in front of their mates, and so the thing just escalates. Let's say you decide you can't ignore something, is use something what we call SWAT, S-W-A-T, which is just a series of little stages that we use in the classroom as part of a discipline plan. So state the rule, warn of what the consequences will be on the second occasion, and then act if something goes wrong, and T for time out. And they're the sort of 4 stages. And lots of schools will have different names or different ways of doing it, but I think it's commonly accepted quite good practice in terms of dealing with that sort of thing.
And what about consistency? Is it really important that teachers are consistent?
I think I would equally rate the use of praise, being positive, and being consistent as the top things that you need to be concentrating on. Because if you say you're going to do something, you need to always follow it through, you need to always do it, otherwise immediately respect has gone. And the other way you lose respect is if one child does something and you treat them in a certain way and then you treat a different child in a different way, then one of them is going to think they're being picked on. But it also means what you can do, sorry guys, that's the bell. I've got to go on duty now, just to make sure everything goes smoothly.
Thanks very much
It's
for your
been a
time.
pleasure.
Great.
Hope it works. Cheers.
You know, I think the key thing that I got from Andy's comments was that appearing to be in control and calm actually gets you a long way to being in control. Now, the next chat that I've lined up is on the other side of London, so I'm going to get a move on. I've come here to Harrow School, where, as any football fan knows, the most famous member of staff is former Premiership ref David Elleray. I'm hoping he's got some top tips for Andy.
Thanks. Come through to study.
Thanks very much. So you've refereed Premiership football matches and you're a housemaster here at Harrow. Is it easier to cope with 22 millionaire footballers sort of adrenaline pumped on the field or a classroom of boys?
I suppose it's easier to referee a match because you know it's only going to last for 90 minutes, then you're clearing off, whereas a classroom full of boys, you know you've got them for a year or 2 years. But in a way that can help as well, because you've got more time to establish relationships, and much of discipline, I think, in schools and on the football fields comes down in part to reputation and indeed your relationship with the people you're dealing with.
So how do you maintain that relationship, whether it's footballers or boys in the classroom?
It doesn't matter if you're a bit strict, or it doesn't matter if you're a little bit lenient. I think if you're fair and consistent and people know where they stand, deep down you'll then get their respect. Football, people tend to know what the rules are, they tend to know what the penalties are, and if you're then fair and consistent in applying them, then by and large they will accept them. In a classroom, I think it's the same, that early on you need to establish as a teacher what is acceptable to you, what is unacceptable, and indeed what the consequences may be, because that's what real life is about. The advice we often give new teachers here is it's better to be tough and ease off, and the same also with refereeing, than to try and start soft and then toughen up. People accept you getting a bit easier in due course. And I think you then have to decide, as we all do when dealing with adolescents in particular, what are your battlegrounds going to be, because you know you can't, as it were, fight them on every single issue. It's not good to battle over dress, because that's very subjective. But turning up on time for a lesson, if a lesson starts at 9 o'clock in the morning, you're either there at 9 o'clock or you're late.
And now with your referee hat on, have you got any anecdotes of maybe famous footballers you've sent off the pitch and they disagreed with you?
I've had my falling out with Roy Keane, who I sent off 4 times, and David Beckham and I have exchanged words on occasions. What I did find was, on the football fields, and I think it translates very much to the classroom as well, is that humour and smiling can often help. I had a game at Chelsea once where 2 players had a bit of a dust-up, and I called them across for a lecture. And Dennis Wise, who was very amusing, came across and just said, right, just send them off and get rid of them, they're a pair of idiots. And we just all burst out laughing, and the game just carried on quite nicely. And sometimes in the classroom, a joke can take the heat out of a situation.
So just bringing it back to our teacher, Andi, she's finding that she often has to raise her voice in the classroom to be heard. Now, is there another way that she can do that without always talking at a high volume?
I think very often when speaking with people, you can communicate your emotions without necessarily changing the volume. And sometimes by speaking that little bit more slowly, that little bit more clearly, that little bit more deliberately, can actually give a degree of authority. Equally, sometimes, if you're in a situation where you're generally in control, just stopping talking because 2 people in the corner are having a chat, and you just stop and wait for them to finish, and eventually everybody looks round and they realise, is often better than shouting at them and telling them to shut up.
Thank you very much, David. Some very sound advice there.
Great pleasure, thank you.
Well, if those tactics that David passed on worked with controlling Roy Keane and Alan Shearer, then I'm pretty sure they're going to be useful to Andi with her pupils. Actually, talking of Andi, it's about time that I reported back to her, but I want to squeeze in one more conversation first. I haven't got time to meet this person, so I'm just going to pull over and give them a call. The person I'm about to speak to should know a thing or two about controlling a room full of people, because he gave up full-time teaching to become a stand-up comedian. His name is Geoff Norcott.
Hello.
Hi, Geoff.
Hi.
I'm calling for some help on controlling a classroom. I thought you'd be a great man to speak to. Are you still keeping up with your teaching, even though you're now a full-time comedian?
Yeah, I still do a few workshops here and there, and I still do a bit of the odd supply just to keep my sort of hand in. And it has helped in some ways, because I think, especially particularly with supply teaching, if you can go into a group of teenagers that you don't know and win their trust and respect in 30 seconds, then you can pretty much do anything. And there was a very tiring period where I was doing full-time comedy and full-time teaching. I was so tired that at some points I'd find myself in front of a room full of 11-year-olds telling them dirty jokes, and then in front of a room full of adults trying to explain to them the rules of the usage of a semicolon.
So do you think there are similar skills involved in controlling a classroom and a comedy club?
The worst heck I've ever had in a comedy club was obviously the "you're not funny" line. And it's similar with some of the things that students might say. But what you do is you take that and you think, right, I'm going to have something to say in a circumstance like that. If you're aware of the kind of things that are going to come out of their mouth and how you might respond, it can put you on the front foot.
Okay, so bringing together your teaching and your comedy experience, what tips could you pass on to our teacher Andi in terms of maintaining her authority and getting the pupils to listen to her?
I think the advice for Andy would centre around attitude. Teenagers, when they actually encounter you in the classroom, the way you first encounter them is going to have a big impact on them. So if you greet them, if you try and get a lot of smiles in the first couple of minutes of the lesson and a positive from the outset, hopefully that will communicate itself to them.
Great, well thanks very much for your help, Geoff.
Miranda, not a problem. If you need any more advice, give us a call.
Okay, bye-bye. Well, that was useful. I thought it was really interesting that he thought that having pre-prepared lines was just as useful for a teacher as for a comedian. Anyway, Andy's expecting me to feed back to her any time now, so I better crack on. I'm here at Andy's College in South London to present her with the top tips from my 3 experts. I've stored everything they told me on my MP4 player, so let's go and see what she thinks. While Andy takes a look at that, let's just remind ourselves of the tips that I picked up for her. First, I met Andi Buck, who suggested the tactics of selective ignoral, or alternatively SWAT, which was state the rule, warn, act and time out. He also stressed being seen to be consistent in punishment and praise. Next, I spoke to David Elleray, who recommended that it's easier to start tough and then ease off rather than vice versa. He valued the use of humour and smiling to diffuse situations and said that speaking slowly and more deliberately was an alternative to raising your voice to get attention. Finally, I called comedian Geoff Norcott, who suggested starting the lesson positively and with a smile, and anticipating any remarks from students that may otherwise catch you off guard. Andy's just finishing up. Let's see what she made of that. So Andi, how was that? Was there some good advice in there for you?
Definitely.
Now, in your video message, you mentioned that there was an observation coming up. Do you feel better prepared for that observation because of the advice that we've got for you?
Absolutely. Speaking more clearly and slowly when I want their attention, and waiting for them if there's any conversations going on before I give out any instructions. I think that will make things go a lot more smoothly for me.
Yeah, because you had a problem about being heard above the sort of the noise of the classroom without raising your voice. Now, was there any other advice in there that was going to be useful for that?
The fact of getting yourself to wait so that pupils know that you are waiting for them, so you're not talking over them, they are all listening to you. It's definitely one bit of advice that I'm definitely going to take forward.
Great. And you were after some non-confrontational ways of controlling the classroom. Did we come up with anything useful there?
Yeah, Andi Buck, who said about the SWAT system of giving a warning and then acting on it. It shows the pupils that you're being consistent and you're fair, and then they know the boundaries and you know what you expect of them. I think that would probably be a good way to not be confrontational with them.
Well, really good luck with the observation.
Thank you very much.
And let us know how you get on.
Will do.
Thanks
Thank
a lot,
you very
Andi.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Hopefully Andi is now better prepared to face her observation. If you want to watch this programme on your own MP4 player, you'll be able to download it as a podcast at the end of the series from the Teachers TV website. But if you can't wait until then, don't forget you can now watch and download the programme via broadband. Next time I'll be sorting out the problems of another new teacher, but until then, goodbye.